Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another edition of All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I am Vince Mickens, and it is exciting to have so many viewers and listeners for today's webcast. It appears the art of aviation career networking has hit, and I want to know more chord, so to speak. Now, granted, last week's show on human space exploration was pretty popular in itself. So the interesting thing is associations are a significant aspect of our industry and play a vital role in connecting with us. And that's one of the goals in terms of our conversation today, whether it's connecting a sales rep with a customer, a pilot or mechanic with a product or service, or a current student or recent graduate with an aviation professional, a company, a mentor, or maybe just a like-minded colleague or peer who happens to be on the same path. Those of us who have been in this industry for a long time, I'll speak for myself, always joke about as big as it is, if you make the rounds regularly enough and engage and get involved, make personal contacts, it can quickly become a very, very small world. I think we can all attest to that, especially if you go to enough conventions, conferences, awards, dinners, etc. Which, by the way, can be advantageous when you're trying to make things happen. Speaking of which, we are going to have a very enlightening conversation with a great group of very knowledgeable guests about how to effectively network, establish productive relationships, and put yourself on the right people's radar to further your career aspirations. One of the questions that comes up pretty often on this show is, where do I start? If you think about it, when you're in high school, you don't know where to start. In college, you're too busy to start. And after you graduate, you can't wait to get started. So let's get started. I'll introduce my guests, a very distinguished panel of incredible guests today, some who I've known for a long time and some who I'm meeting for the first time. We'll start with Sierra Grimes. Sierra is with NBAA, better known as the National Business Aviation Association. I should flip that. The National Business Aviation Association, better known as NBAA. She is the Senior Manager of Registration and Programs. We are former colleagues during my stint there at NBAA, and it is great to have you with us today, Sierra.
Thank you so much for having me, Vince. I'm so excited to participate on this panel with such an amazing group of empowered women that are doing great work in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should mention that you started a project a few years ago that started out as something small and now has become something big. It is called YoPro. It's in reference to young professionals being encouraged to network and get into the business aviation industry. And that thing has taken off like a rocket, literally, with a lot of things that you'll tell us about and the details about that program. So really looking forward to that conversation. Another longtime friend and colleague, Cassandra Bosco. Welcome to the show. Cassandra is the Director of Aviation and Industry Relations with Women in Aviation International. Cassandra, she and I have this thing where we have seen each other at just about every aviation event on the planet. I mean, whether it's a conference, a convention, it doesn't matter if the convention's here domestic or international. You know, I'll walk around the corner and it's, hey, Cassandra. and so we've had that kind of privilege of getting to know each other through all of these things. Of course, I've been to many of the Women in Aviation International conferences and conventions, which I've watched grow from when it was first started to now. And one of the little sidebars that I think is kind of interesting is that it's Women in Aviation International. But since I started going to it about 15 years ago, there are guys that go to this conference, and that has grown as exponentially as the conference has. So it's really kind of cool, but it's kind of interesting. It's like guys are like, no, this is some valuable information. I'm going too. So I'm sure Cassandra could tell us all about that. Cassandra, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, of our nearly 15,000 members, 20% are male.
There you go.
They're our supporters and our allies, and we're very happy to have them on board.
There you go. So great again to have you here. And then someone new who I haven't met yet, but I'm really looking forward for her participating today, and that is Stephanie Hartsfield. Stephanie is a first officer for American Airlines. She flies the Airbus A320 and 321. Most of us have been on those if you've flown on American. She also has time in the Boeing 757 and 767. And Stephanie serves on the Professional Development Committee for OBAP, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, better known as OBAP. That's the moniker for it that everybody knows. Stephanie, it's great to have you. Looking forward to hear what you guys have been up to.
Well, thank you so much, Vince. This is a great pleasure, and I look forward to this panel of distinguished colleagues. It's just really exciting for me.
Well, great. Good. Thank you very much for being with us today. And then, so this is really cool. So we have an international guest all the way from Bucharest, Romania, which is, I guess it's about 10 after 6 p.m. there. It's about almost dinner time. Sorry to hold you up for dinner. Rucsandra Mihai. Rucsandra is the Vice President of Women in Corporate Aviation. She's also a certified international aviation trainer. Rucsandra, excuse me, has been in the business for over 30 years, and currently, as I mentioned, does aviation training there in Romania. And we're going to hear a lot more about what she does and what Women in Corporate Aviation has been doing in terms of bringing more people into the industry. Rucsandra, great to have you.
Thank you very much, Vince, for the invitation, and thank you for having me in here with so amazing women around me. And hello to everyone from Bucharest, Romania.
And thank you. And then we have Stacy Shearer. Now, Stacy's been on the program before. Stacy is the board chair for the board of directors of the Helicopter Association International, as I've been famously saying today, otherwise known as HAI. Stacy's also a corporate captain flying the Leonardo, it used to be called the Augusta, AW-139 helicopter for Fanatics and Executive Jet Management. And Stacy has a storied career, and it's really great that we could bring the helicopter world as part of this discussion today. Stacy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vince. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So we have a great guest, and we really want to talk about some things that are going to help our viewers and listeners about what they can do to get into this. So a lot of the programs that I've had in the past have, including the one I spoke of earlier last week, have been about specific areas that are options and opportunities for the aspiring young aviation professional to get into. Today, what we want to do is talk about how you move forward with connecting, networking, getting engaged, becoming involved in various associations and some of the things that we do. So I'm going to start out, I'll open it up to you, Sierra, to tell us a little bit about how you got involved with NBAA and what you do now for them, and in particular about your YoPro program.
Of course. So I am definitely one of those people that fell into the aviation industry. I come from a small rural town in Southern Virginia and came up to DC, eyes wide open, ready to take over the world. Went to Howard University and studied political science. But while in school, I did some work at the Hilton Hotel, the Capitol Hilton near the White House. And after school, it was a time in which, everyone's searching for a job. One thing that I learned prior to coming to DC is that associations are a big thing in nonprofits, and there is an association for everything under the sun. And so I had an opportunity to interview for a job with this association called the National Business Aviation Association. And at that time, I'm like, what is this? I've never heard of this before. My only introduction to aviation or interaction with it at that point was, getting on a commercial flight to take a trip, or a vacation. That's what I envisioned when I thought of aviation. Interviewed with NBAA, got the job, and then 8.5 years later, I'm here. I've been bitten by the aviation bug at this point, so much so that while I was working there, as you know, Vince, when I came in as a fresh young pup at NBAA, I had the idea of looking around at our show floors where we have over 20,000 people there. But I saw my peers, but I didn't know them if they didn't work at NBAA. I would know their direct reports, some of their VPs, because I would interact with them through my role at NBAA, but I didn't know them personally. And then I started to just sit back and think, well, what are we doing for this group? NBAA had a lot of work for students, for those who are in college and trying to, recruit people to come into the industry. But I didn't see anything that was a direct impact for those young professionals who were either first starting out into the industry or trying to transition into that leadership role. And I thought that that was something that we should start to embark upon as the membership body to represent our industry. So put together some thoughts, talk to some people, like we talk about mentors, people like yourself and other VPs in our company, to just kind of wrap my mind around the industry and what we could do. And the first thing that I could think of was, let's put together a networking event. Let's see if this will be something that these young people want. Do they want to come meet their peers? And once we can gauge the interest from that, where can we go from there? So it was in NBA based 2012, I believe it was, in Orlando.
I remember very specifically.
Exactly. We put together our first networking event. I'll never forget my VP, Chris Dogg at the time. They did it and they're like, we're doing open bar. And I'm like, okay, cool. You guys are going to let us do the open bar. I can bring some young people out if you let me do that. And then it was 2 days before the show goes live, and we were set to send out another email blast. And one thing that Chris and Ed consistently reminded me, they were very supportive. They're like, Sierra, if we get 50 young people to come out, we will be so proud of you guys and your team, and we will know that we still made an impact. Well, 2 days before we're about to send out the reminder to everyone, Chris comes into the office in the convention center. He goes, do you have another marketing piece going out? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, have you checked your numbers lately? I'm like, I checked them yesterday. He goes, you guys have over 250 people registered. No more marketing pieces. I think you've got your message out.
That's great, though. Well, that just shows you very much the power of networking and how important it is for young people. By the way, I steal that term, the power of networking, from Stacy. Stacy, I'm coining your term. I like when I heard you talk about that and use that phrase. But really, the power of networking and seeing who you can get to know and get to know your peers. So this brings up a really important point. It is as important to know your peers that are trying to do the same thing as you're doing, because you can share stories with each other, share experiences, et cetera, so forth, as it is to get to know people that at some point can hire you or help you get hired. So that's a great thing. And yes, I remember Chris's excitement about it. He was a little blown away and excited at the same time. So and NBAA has owned YoPro ever since.
Vince, I'd like to comment for a second on Sierra.
Sure.
I worked at NBAA for 17 years. And I knew Sierra when she came in, as she says, as a young pup. And I think one of the important things for your audience to listen to and absorb is, first of all, my entire career has been spent in the association end of things, and it's a fabulous way to network. But what Sierra did, even though she came in as a young pup, she looked around and she didn't stick in her one place. She looked for a niche that she could develop a specialty in. And she branded that for the organization, and it's become a roaring success. Sierra actually advises women in aviation on our young professionals program. But I just want to applaud you and let others use that as an example of how you do network and move forward. Look for an opportunity where something is missing that's of value to the organization, and step right in.
I think that's a great point, Cassandra, that you bring up. And it's about taking initiative beyond just your responsibility, because Sierra came in with a specific responsibility with regard to registration for all of the NBAA's events and worked her way up the ladder with that. But while doing that, she also saw, as you said, a valuable way to contribute to the organization in another realm. And now she has also bridged the gap, which I think all of us desperately want to do. And that's bridge the gap between us gray-haired folks. I guess I'm the only gray-haired one here, but anyhow, I'm just kidding. And the younger crowd. So I think you bring up a really great point. I want to shift to Stacy for a minute. Stacy has been very aggressive about the importance of networking. As I mentioned earlier, she calls it the power of networking. In fact, I wrote it down as a note because I wanted to make sure, because in some conversations with Stacy, she's talked about the power of networking, making positive connections, and making the personal connection. Stacy, how about telling us a little bit? Well, Stacy, let's go back and talk about helicopters flying over your home or whatever, or near your home, and you deciding that that was definitely something you were going to do.
Well, yeah. So I grew up in the center of California, Central California, in the San Joaquin Valley, and helicopters used to fly over my house to go fight fires in the summertime. So I was constantly looking up, and I mean, if you see an aircraft fly over, hey, if I did that, it takes me everywhere. Everywhere I want to be. So anyways, I got interested in helicopters. We didn't have a lot of money. I had a lot of brothers, and there wasn't tons of money. So I had to figure out how I was going to fly. And then I ended up joining the Army and then applying to Warrant Officer Flight School, or Warrant Officer Candidate School. And I got accepted, and I ended up flying Hueys for training and Blackhawks. So I was a Huey and Blackhawk pilot, and then after about 11 years, I was getting out of the Army, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And there's a couple things that I noticed, well, that I already knew. And one of them was that I didn't know anybody outside of the military, not really, that was flying helicopters. So I had no idea what the aviation industry was like. And I was a woman. So there weren't that many of us. So I had to start meeting people so they could get to know me, so they may like me and hire me. So I think because of, the challenges, I see this panel of women here, and I know that each one of you has had challenges that might be different from the majority population in the aviation industry. So you've had to find ways to work yourself around that and figure out the best way to go about this. So I think that's why we end up being good at this, because we've had to work with the current structure and find our way in this world. And in that, we've been able to pull other people along with us. So I noticed that there wasn't anybody outside to connect the military to civilians. So I became good at helping military people do a transition. So I happened to be giving a class one day after I had been in the industry for a while. I had flown tours in the Grand Canyon. I had flown in Los Angeles Air Ambulance. I had flown some corporate IFR flying in Los Angeles, all in helicopters. And I made my way back east to the East Coast and ended up being a Sikorsky test pilot for about 7 years. And then I've been flying corporate now for the past few years. Fly this beautiful helicopter back here over my shoulder. And this is New York City. This is West 30th Street in New York. And so I'm often find myself here these days. I found myself reaching back to some of my friends in the military and trying to find a way to help them. And while I was doing that, HAI came to a presentation I happened to be doing, and they were there to give their own presentation. And they asked me to, hey, you do a really good job talking to military people and showing them the ins and outs of the helicopter industry. Why don't you come help us do a military to civilian transition workshop? We'd love to have you. So for the last several years, I've been doing Mil to Civ for the Helicopter Association, and anywhere else I can run into people, and a lot of civilians too, just to give them advice and resume reviews and critiques and things like that, just to connect the industry with the military people because of the big shortage that we had and the big shortage that we will still have that's coming at us like a freight train. So I just sort of fell into it just because of necessity. I think it's the necessity I found myself in this situation, just kind of being a minority and having empathy for the struggle. So here I am.
Wow. That's a really great story, but you bring up some really great points. And that is, you realized that there was a challenge there of how do I make myself known? And I'm going to chime in a question that just came in early on this program. As I said, we have a lot of people that are watching, but it kind of ties into what you're talking about. So this person, her name is Jasmine Marshall, and she is asking if you have advice for some, and I'm going to let any of you chime in on this. We can start with you, Stacy, and move it from there. Do you have any advice for someone who recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in aviation management? How many times have we heard that? With no experience during these difficult times?
I think May I answer?
Sure.
I think it's a chance for anyone who wants to join this career. If you have the necessary skills to be in aviation, go for it. If you like aviation and you like the schedule, you can do whatever you want. Even if it's a job like as a flight attendant, even if it's a job as a maintenance professional or a pilot or whatever. But try to embrace this. How? Attend, I don't know, different conferences, apply for a scholarship, use your network, your professional network relations in order to find a job. Especially if she said that she has a degree in a bachelor degree in management or marketing.
I'm sorry?
The lady that was asking
Yes.
you, she has a degree. Okay.
She does. She has one in aviation management. Sorry.
So I can advise her to apply for a scholarship if she knows exactly what she wants. WCA, Women in Corporate Aviation, has this special program for future professional in business aviation. We today, I'm happy to say that we opened the application window for the new scholarships. We have scholarships for future and active professionals in corporate and business aviation. A lot of scholarships, the value of the scholarship is $60,000. This is the spring scholarships for WCA. And we have also the autumn scholarships. And for the last 15 years, we have offered scholarships. The value of the scholarships was like $700,000. So use this connection in order to start an aviation career.
So I'm sorry, Rucsandra, I was going to ask you, and I'm asking this actually to everybody because this question is probably a really strong one. What are you guys doing currently to engage, or how does a student or a recent graduate engage with your association when we're probably not going to be able to do in-person or a version of that until the second half of this year?
You can, sorry, Cassandra, please.
No, Cassandra, finish. You were going. Go ahead.
I was just wanted to tell that we have this mentorship program. If you apply for a membership in Women in Corporate Aviation, then you can apply for a scholarship. So you get a training. Let's say that you get an award, you get a training, a professional training. Because I think that in order to be professional, you have to get professional training. So everybody can apply for this. Just join any association, either it is Women Aviation International, Women in Corporate Aviation. We are a community of professionals trying to mentor and guide the young ones in this industry.
Sure. Cassandra, I'm sorry, Rucsandra, while we have you, both Sandras, while we have you, tell us a little bit about how you got into aviation. You were a flight attendant for 30 years. I take a lot of that was international. So how did you get into that? And then how did that parlay to getting involved with Women in Corporate Aviation to the point of where you're now the vice president?
Well, I'm a former flight attendant, commercial and private. I started flying in 1988, and in that period, being a flight attendant was a very exclusive job, especially in this part of Europe where I am from, the East Europe. And I was privileged to fly for 30 years. I've been, I had a different position during my career. I was a flight instructor, an in-flight instructor. I'm a trainer since 2007. I realized that I have to put all my knowledge in the hands of the future flight attendants. So to use this knowledge that I gained through these years, teaching the others, guiding the others through this career path. So first of all, I've been a volunteer. And then I became a member in corporate and Women in Corporate Aviation. I was attending a lot of European conferences, EBACE, EBAA, and it's how I found out about Women in Corporate Aviation.
Okay.
And last year, I've been elected vice president. It's an international community of amazing women, and it's like my second family. So even if I live abroad, I'm working with them from abroad for the same common. Our main goal is to mentor and to guide the others to start a career in aviation. So we are
Okay.
role models for the future aviation professional, if I can say so.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
You're
Cassandra, you
welcome.
had some things you wanted to say with regard to what you guys are
I
doing.
want to address Jasmine because I'm sure there are a lot of other people on this call who are in a similar situation. We're in a lockdown, we're in a pandemic. The industry is not doing as well as it was a year ago, but it's going to come back because everybody's going to go back to flying. So in the meantime, an aviation management degree actually has a lot of flexibility to it. I'm not a pilot, but I tripped into the industry 30 years ago. I have worked for associations the entire time. I recommend that you look at the trade associations, see if they have anything available, even if it's not, even if it's a more junior level, like Sierra came in as. In a trade association, you're often able to try out different hats and see what works well with you. The other thing I would recommend, because we're not attending events in person right now, Women in Aviation has an amazing chapter structure. If you go to our website, you can find a chapter near you. They're doing virtual events right now. We also have a mentorship program. If you go to our mentor page, you'll be able to find somebody in aviation management that you can talk to and get their advice on what you do. And in the meantime, because it may take a little while in this environment, I recommend doing whatever you can to increase your skills, whatever that is. Take some other management classes, take computer classes. I started in the industry, and as I said, I'm not a pilot. The first thing I did was went to flight school because I needed, or ground school, excuse me, because I needed to understand what pilots in the industry were talking about. So any skill like that that you can accomplish while you're in this waiting mode will help you.
I think that's a great point, Cassandra, that you bring up about that. There are a number of people, students that have been on this program as student guests, and that's exactly what some of them are doing. Some of them are going ahead and getting their master's either in business or in aerospace engineering or aeronautical science or whatever it is, but they're advancing their education while they're kind of in a lull waiting for, things to kind of open up. While we're on talking about that and what you just mentioned, so you're not a pilot, but you've been in the aviation industry forever and a day. And how did aviation even, become a thing with you?
So I was looking for a job. It was in the late 80s. And back then one looked in the newspaper for a job. And I tripped on something that happened to be for the General Aviation Manufacturers Association. I got that job.
Gamma.
Yes, for Gamma. And I worked with the iconic Ed Stimson. And that was it. I fell in love with aviation. As I told you, I went to ground school. So I knew what I was talking about. I knew what I was hearing from the manufacturers. When you work for an association, you meet people all over the industry. And then I moved on after a couple of years. I went to NBAA for 17 years. I met people in flight departments. I met manufacturers. I met all kinds of people. I learned how to do exhibits management because I was doing the press room at the show. So being in a trade association is an ever evolving event, and it's in an area that you love. So I had job offers from OEMs, et cetera, but I preferred staying in the association end of things. And then, so while I was at NBAA, Women in Aviation, I am one of their founding board members. I'm actually member number 3 out of the 15,000 members that we have.
Wow.
So
That's
like
starting at the beginning.
Like
Wow.
Sierra, I found a niche. And it grew with me as my time, no matter where I was working, that was an outside niche. It was great. It bridged communications and education. And I met so many people. And one of the things I was going to talk about is that networking, everybody talks networking. What does that mean? It actually is very simple. All of you listening here have been networking your entire life. It's basically just connecting with people. So for every event you go to, for every phone call you're on, you're connecting with us now. If somebody sends me their email, I'm going to get in touch with them if they have more questions. You're developing a network of people. You're developing mentors. You don't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, will you be my mentor? You start by asking them questions, and people in aviation love to share. And we love to bring people with us. We want more people in aviation. It's a very open group. So just making those connections over time, next thing you know, that person has recommended you for something. And then what I also want to add is don't forget to give back. So as you move along, look at what Sierra's done. She came in, she was young, she started an organization that is now, she's giving back to her other young colleagues. So that's part of what you have to do. Networking and mentoring is a two-way street.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think one of the important points about networking or connecting, as you said, is, and I've heard Stacy talk about this, and others have talked about this on the programs previously, and that is the personal connection and the follow through. In other words, and doing it while you're in the beginning stages, not waiting until you're actually job hunting, or even if you are job hunting now, but you just start making those connections. So say you're still in school, you've got another year or two before you get your degree, or you're in high school and you're still trying to figure out what college you're going to go to, but you're interested in aviation. And if you're specifically interested in a certain area, like being a pilot or being a mechanic or being an avionics tech, or some other aspect of the industry, and that goes for aerospace as well, to start making contacts, figuring out where you can do that. And one of the reasons we're doing this today is because the associations is a great starting point. It's a great place to, and as Sierra mentioned earlier, most of us, myself included, even having been in the industry and being a member for a long time of AOPA and that type of thing, still really didn't recognize the value of it until I started working in the association world. And then I was like, okay, so this is why this is so important. Yeah, you think at my age I would have figured that out sooner, but I figured it out 15 years ago. Close enough.
Vince, I just want to add a quick follow on. So for you guys listening, follow up. If a mentor or someone you've networked with offers you information, send them a thank you note. It can be email, but I went to an event a couple of years ago. I was speaking, and there was a student in the audience, and he asked me afterwards, can you help me get a job in ATC? And I said, well, that's an FAA function, but I can introduce you to people at the ATC association. I said, just send me, I gave him my card, said, send me an email, follow up. I will put you in touch. Crickets. Didn't hear from that person. The following year, different group, different student said, hey, it was ATC again. I want to be in ATC. I said, here's my card, contact me. I'll put you in touch with the Air Traffic Control Association. He did. He had an internship that summer with the Air Traffic Control Association.
There you go. Yeah. We could do a whole
all about follow-up.
We could do a whole show on follow-up. But listen, I want to go to Stephanie. Stephanie, it's really great to have you again. And Stephanie is with the Organization for Black Aerospace Professionals. And in the same realm that Stacy was talking about it in terms of what you guys have dealt with as women in the industry, I think people of color we've had our same challenges. And that's one of the reasons OBAP was formed when it was. And so Stephanie, I'd like to introduce you now again and ask you to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into aviation, and then how you got involved with OBAP and what you guys are doing.
Sure, Vince. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for having me. My background is, I think, 34 years old in aviation, but I started traveling with my family as a young child, and my grandparents had actually nicknamed me their traveling buddy. So I knew that I had a love for traveling even at a very early age. And so fast forward that to my 9th grade year in high school, and I had an opportunity to participate in a magnet program. Atlanta Public High School at that time was called North Fulton, which is no longer in existence. Anyways, I said all of that to say our magnet was international studies and the International Baccalaureate program. So we had a Saturday event that was mandatory for us called the Geography Bee. So my friends and I were not fully engaged at that Saturday morning event and had decided between us, we're going to do what we can to tank whatever it is that starts this out, and we're going to get out of here and get to the mall so we can have fun on our Saturday. And they told us, you're not going to be able to leave until the entire program is completed. And that changed everybody's disposition. And I'll say all of that to say that I then found myself in the final round of this competition, just me and one other kid. And they rattled off the prizes that we were going to get. And first place included all of the same prizes as second place, with the difference of a sailing lesson versus a flight lesson, a discovery flight. And I wanted to end it right there. Let's go. I'm ready to go fly. And so we played it through somehow, depending on who you ask, my mother or me. I ended up with that flight lesson, even though I won the contest. So I changed my whole outlook from that point. And I talk to young folks about discovery flights all the time, because even if you can't see it, if you can do it, then you can see it, you know. And I'm distorting the saying as it goes: if you can see it, you can be it. But the truth is that discovery flight galvanized it for me. And again, it was like a call to action. So I got my little self together, switched to the magnet program for mathematics and science, Benjamin Mays High School. And the rest is history. I went on to graduate from Mays, had to do some extensive work to get my GPA where it needed to be. Went to the Naval Academy Prep School for 1 year, and then on to the Naval Academy. And with that in mind, I was planning to do military aviation. You know, another set of details on how I ended up at Navy as opposed to perhaps Air Force. And I wore glasses by the time I was getting commissioned. And so all of what I had envisioned for my for my career choice was changed for me. So all that said, having that dream and having that goal, I persisted. And I think that's also a message that I like to carry forward, is that, you know, never let it rest. If that's what you want, you have to be resilient, determined, and you have to demonstrate grit to get to it. So I'd say commissioned in 1995, somewhere in the 5 years of my obligated service, I was able to accomplish my private pilot license through the Navy Flying Club in Atlanta at Dobbins Air Base. And then at that time, NAS Atlanta. And then actually, Stacy, it was a retired helicopter pilot, Army type, that was my flight instructor. And so all of that said, I think I leveraged my employment with the military to help fund the aviation dream. And when I left active duty, I went on to do a full-time program for airline career.
So you paid for your flight training yourself through your career with the military?
Yes and no. I did also have help. I want to tell you now up front, I had help from my family, because it's very expensive. It's not like I did the private pilot's license myself. To continue on, that other, I don't even know, $60,000 something school bill came with help from my family, from my own savings, and from the organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And I am what I call a life cycle representative of that organization, because when I joined, I was a private pilot. They went on to help me continue in becoming a flight instructor. And I really am where I am today because of the networking to foot stomp that value, and because of the support and mentorship that I've gotten through that organization, again, as well as my family.
Tell us about the professional development program that you're involved with, the committee you're on there with OBAP, and the type of things that you guys are doing, particularly during this pandemic, to help people get into the industry.
Sure. We started with webinars back in the spring, and so that content is still available on the organization's website, obap.org. It's obap.org, and the APDP committee is one of the, I think, drop down or drill down, pages that will allow you to access resources and then get further information. What the webinars have done is kind of created an event and a venue for us to be able to have dialogue. We had some courageous conversations. We had some discussions around financial planning in a downtime for the industry, because we do know that it's very much cyclical. But then we're also looking at, in this coming months, how to do our outreach through the webinar platform as well. We had a very strong pilots in schools, but now aerospace professionals in schools. And so we're looking at how we're going to be able to do that in the month of February virtually. They're also developing a program that is going to be STEM related in a 12-week course that gets, I think, young students involved in the ideas and all of the different aspects of what is possible for them in the aerospace industry. Lastly, with APDP, we are working directly with candidates, particularly or primarily, I should say, that are in the pilot program, but we also have been able to provide support through the network for other different careers, particularly like A&P mechanics. But what we're doing is we're trying to complete that successful equation. You know the equation, right, Vince?
Yes, I do.
So it's preparation plus opportunity equals success.
Absolutely.
And we want to be instrumental in the A plus B part. If we can provide that opportunity, we absolutely are going to want to make sure that we can provide the preparation that those candidates would need, so that the outcome is a successful one. And
Sure.
so that's what APDP is really about. If we're not able to provide the opportunity, and say the candidate does get that opportunity through their own resources and networking, we're still very much there to be a part of their preparation so that they do meet success when they get to that point. So all of that is part of what APDP does. We have a team of about 23 people. We have relationships. I won't call it a partnership, but we have relationships with hiring teams across the industry. So we're able to typically find within a phone call somebody that we can talk to on behalf of one of our mentees to be able to get greater detail of what is needed for the opportunity that they have before them.
Stephanie, you are actively flying currently in the industry, so you're in the mix, so to speak, in terms of what's going on with the challenges with COVID-19 and that type of thing. What can you share that would be helpful about what you're experiencing right now and what you see as the future as we get past this pandemic?
I think in the morning when I wake up, I think to myself, this too shall pass. I think I've also mentioned the aviation industry is cyclical. So I think right now we are in a time of test, and then we will find ourselves resurging to be back in that state where we're looking for more people to come back to the industry, like Stacy alluded to. We had a pilot shortage 2 years ago. It will return. There will be a demand for aviation professionals across all aspects of the industry, because we have, just as America goes, a very significant age gap. And it's not only for the aerospace industry, but particularly for us, we know, because of the age 65 required retirement for our pilots. So this too shall pass is the answer.
We were talking about that in pre-show. This too shall pass. Anybody else want to chime on the this too shall pass?
For sure it will pass. It's just a stop. Aviation always was, and aviation, it is, let's say, the future of transportation. I don't know. And I was reading today, I think Cassandra was telling at the beginning that there are a lot of women involved in this area, but only 5% are pilots or something like that. So I encourage if you have the necessary skills, I encourage every young woman to become a pilot if they have the skills. Otherwise, to look forward for another job in the aviation, as a flight attendant, or I don't know, whatever. I think we have the chance to be whatever we want to be. And the key for success, because Stephanie was talking about success, I think it's keep educating yourself. If you try to evolve, to keep educating yourself, do something for yourself, take some lessons, do some trainings, try to be helpful for anybody, even if it's somebody from high school, or like you said, a student. You never know who's next to you. You never know who needs your advice, your knowledge, in fact, because it's a fact. We are in this field for so many years, and we learn so many things, and I think we have the knowledge to help the others in any way possible.
So I want to add that there
Please.
are segments of the industry that are hiring voraciously. And if you are someone who wanted to work for the airlines and can't right now, charter is hiring like crazy. And because people are using charter because it's safer to travel. The cargo industry is hiring. They're booming. And so it's times like this when you pivot, even if it's temporarily.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that, because there's a lot going on in the aerospace side of things too, and they are hiring. And one of the points that was brought up by some people I talked to from Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, is that you don't have to have a degree in aeronautical or aerospace engineering to work at a JPL. They need people with all kinds of skills to deal with all different aspects of that industry. The same thing goes to SpaceX. You may think you have to be a rocket scientist, not necessarily. So that's a really great point that you guys are bringing up, and I think that it's something for everybody to really think about. Is if you, because as another example, I had the senior vice president of sales and marketing for Garmin on several shows back, and he came on the show stating that they had like 108 openings. Literally, he had checked with human resources just before coming on the program. And it's Garmin. Everybody knows what that is, the GPS world. But they have been thriving even through the pandemic. So there are other opportunities. And as you said, Cassandra, go do something. If you want to stay in aviation, go find something to do in the industry that keeps you in it while you're, going after whatever your goal is, and also be open to change. We all know stories about, I know somebody, it's a personal friend that came out of University of North Dakota with a degree, was on track to be a professional pilot. And at the time, the industry took a nosedive, as it does from time to, not the industry, the economy took a nosedive as it does from time to time. And that person said, I don't know if I want to be a professional pilot now or not, and ended up working in air safety at the Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association, and excelling there. So you just never know about that. And speaking of that, I wanted to come back to you, Sierra, and ask you a little bit more about, because the business aviation industry is starting to see an uptick again. Everybody's starting to fly quite a bit. It took a really strong hit last year, but I've talked to some heads of corporate flight departments, and they say they're almost 100%. What can you tell us about what's going on there? And again, tying that into your YoPro initiative.
Yes, no, I agree. A lot of our companies and our members, we're hearing from them that, the uptick is happening, and they're optimistic about this year. And we're all, as an industry, trying to go from the mode of surviving to now thriving after the pandemic. And when it comes to young people, I think this is just a great opportunity. We all highlighted how, even as you heard our stories, as we all got into the industry, we may have had one path that we intended, but we had to veer away. So detours aren't necessarily a complete no, a cancellation. You may have to take a detour and it may just delay it a little bit. So one thing that I think specifically, as we have women in aviation, women in corporate aviation, OBAP represented, for people who represent those minority groups, this is a great time. I say that through YoPro all the time. even with business aviation, there is a call now across the aviation industry to actually answer the call for diversity. And so for those young people who represent those diverse backgrounds, tap into those organizations and use this time to actually propel forward, because the industry is asking for it. So if you've done your work through schooling, this is the time to leverage that. And we're always pushing that down to the students that we talk through with YoPro. And that's what YoPro represents. It's representing a diverse group of people. Yes, it's categorized by age, but what we've seen is that by even myself, I've been a representation for business aviation, because when I got in, and I'm young, and it still wasn't a lot of people, specifically not a lot of Black women that I saw, and then nowadays, I'm meeting people by having relationships with Women in Corporate Aviation, with OBAP, where I'm seeing more people that look like me that are being able to be put on platforms. So I think that young people can just tap into those representations that you have and leverage this time where people are calling for a diverse group. If you represent it, go after it.
Very well said, Sierra. And as I said to you guys before we went live, I said, we're gonna eat an hour up really quickly, and we are doing just that. So as we start towards the wrap up, I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to tell me a little bit more about, or tell us, I should say, a little bit more about whatever it is that you'd like to emphasize about your organization. Stacy, I'm going to start with you, with Helicopter Association International, and what type of things are you guys doing? What do you recommend for people connecting with your organization to either become a member or and become engaged more with the helicopter world?
Well, I think the first thing, I think it's all the questions that I've been seeing in the chats and the Q&A here that are coming across that I'm slowly answering when everybody else is talking, but there's so much information that all of us have. You need to connect. You need to find the sector of the aviation industry, or anything really, that excites you, and you need to connect with the people doing the job that you would like to do. Connect with them, let them ask advice. And not everyone is naturally going to turn around and answer your questions and become a mentor, but you're going to find mentors if you reach out and ask those questions. Join those organizations, go to the events that they hold, even if they're online, connect, follow up. As a lot of, as Cassandra said, follow up with people and ask for help. If you don't ask the questions, if you don't reach out and ask those questions, you'll never know. And ask the same question to multiple people, because everyone has had a different route in this industry. There is no road that is the same for everyone in the aviation industry ever. And so you may find your own unique path to gather your skills, become more well-rounded in this time. It's like any other time. Maybe it's lasting a little longer, but 9/11 offered the same thing: a lull in the industry, a stop in aviation for a moment. Use that time as early as you can. Take a class, meet new people, learn a new skill, become more well-rounded, fill out your resume with more things that make you valuable for employers, and let them know, yeah, there was a lull, but what I did was I went over here and I learned this new skill, and you will become more valuable. And the more you reach out and listen to people, follow some of that advice, and be open to change. And you're not in aviation because you're in it for the money. I mean, how many of us are getting rich with aviation? We're in it for a passion. So we all share a similar passion. So it makes it easy for us to connect. So that's my advice. You do need to connect, even if it's online. If you can't go to an event, then do it online and make friends online, and you'll meet them in real life when the next NBAA or OBAP or a WAI or a Heli Expo comes in town. So that's my advice. Make those connections early, make them now, reach out, find out what you need to know, and then move forward.
Not to mention, after we get past the pandemic, things like AirVenture and Sun and Fun and all these other great shows that we're all desperately missing and totally enjoy. Stephanie, let me come back to you and ask you if you had anything to add about OBAP and any particular thing that you guys are doing that you'd like to make sure we hear about.
Thank you so much again. So our website is OBAP, that's Oscar Bravo Alpha Papa.org. And we are doing a Dreams to Careers series. So we're going to have a what I call Aerospace Professionals APIS Schools Week that starts February 15th. The registration is open now. It's going to be ending with a very diverse panel of interviews that will be, I guess, web broadcasts for that audience to kind of get people motivated and excited about it. Again, to dovetail on what Stacy said, now's the time, and what everyone is saying here. This is where we have an opportunity to be better and do something for ourselves that will help prepare us for what comes next and the opportunities that are ahead of us. So I encourage everybody to visit that website. If you're watching this program right now, you're already winning. So thank you for being here and congratulations. And thank you, Vince, for this platform.
Absolutely, Stephanie. Sierra, let me come back to you real quick before I go to everybody else. I forgot, you guys have a student membership at NBAA. You want to tell about that real quick?
Yes, so it's a $30 membership every year. It gets you access to all of the whole gander of all things NBAA, surveys, reports. There's a job board where you can see different jobs. NBAA has committees that represent each sector of the industry. So if you're looking to be a specific person, like the young lady that was looking for information about flight attendants, I sent that link. We have resources for you. And also at NBAA base, when we have all those over 20,000 industry professionals that come together once a year, we have dedicated education and a dedicated day just to students for you to network, not only with your peers like we talked about, but for you to get out on that exhibit hall floor, meet with some of the companies, make those connections, get business cards, possibly get hired, and then use that network to tap into our mentorship program. And then the young professionals are right there to help you as you go throughout your career.
Could you run that by me again? Just kidding. Thank you. Rucsandra, tell us a little bit about Women in Corporate Aviation.
Well, even if aviation at this time is a little bit shady, I think that aviation will bounce back. So it's the time for networking. It's the time to connect with the others. So I advise everybody to check our platform, to check our website, and become a member in WCA and apply for scholarships. You have the window open till April 9. You can apply for any scholarship that suits you. And we have also an international free networking event this Saturday. It's a valuable resource, and you can meet our amazing community. So join us if you can for this event. And please don't lose your hope, because we are a network of professionals from all over the world and different domains, and we are here to help anyone who wants this help. So you are more than welcome to reach WCA for anything you need.
Great, thank you. And Cassandra, I'm going to let you help wrap us up.
Okay, thank you so much, Vince, and thank you to all of you who have been listening. So Women in Aviation, our conference is going to be virtual for the first time ever. And that means that the registration price is only $39 right now if you register in advance. The dates are March 11th and 12th. We have amazing content, incredible speakers. Our keynote speakers are just amazing. We do have a young professionals program there as well, and a student program. We are giving out over almost $400,000 in scholarships at the conference. In addition to that, we're going to have spring scholarships over $250,000. Look for that. Those have not been announced yet, but they will be shortly. One thing, and go to our Jobs Connect site. We actually have about 80 jobs posted now. Most of them are pilot jobs all over the country and all kinds of equipment. And just the last thing to add, go to the chapters. It is a tough time, but network. There are so many opportunities, even at this time in aviation. The FAA is hiring. Connect with us. I put my email in there. Remember, be courageous. Step forth, talk to people, even if you don't know them. The next thing you know, you'll have this huge network. So everybody out there, hang in there. We will all get through this together. And please rely on us and each other.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank all of you for being a part of it. You know, one of the many common denominators is scholarships. Everybody has talked about it. All of your associations have different variations of that, different opportunities with that. I know from experience that unfortunately a lot of young people sometimes overlook it or don't realize just what's out there. And there are a lot of opportunities for all sizes of scholarships, for all types of career interests, whether you're going on the mechanic side or the pilot side or some other aspect of it, and that type of thing. And I just want to touch real quickly on the follow-up thing that Cassandra mentioned earlier, and I'm sure everybody would agree with 100%. If you connect with somebody and they give you an opportunity to connect you with someone that could further your career, follow up. You know, don't blow it off. Don't get nervous about it and say, oh well, you know, because I've had that happen too. And you know, for us also, we're connecting you with somebody that we've established a relationship with. So it's kind of embarrassing to tell them, hey, I got a young person that's interested, although they get it because they've been around as long as we have, but still to tell them that, and for them to then have to tell them, they say, whatever happened to so and so? Oh, I never heard back from them. So you don't want to be in that category. The other piece that I like to add, just as a general career thought, and that is always make yourself available. So when you finally do get in wherever it is with whatever you're doing, be the one to raise your hand, be the one to say yes, because the boss will remember you before they remember the one that said, oh, well, not this time because I got something else going on or whatever. They're going to remember the person that every time they called on them, they said, yes, I'm available. Yes, I can do it. Even if you know, internally you're thinking, man, you know, but do it because, and as an example, I had a young lady on several months ago. She's a first officer on a commuter right seat type of a thing. She has been moved 4 times in the last year by the commuter airline, but she's still flying and she's still getting paid. But she's literally had to pack up and move to another city because they said, well, we have 2 choices. We can furlough you or you can move. She's in her early 20s or mid 20s, and she moved from Chicago to Minneapolis, et cetera, you know, and she's just been doing it. I guarantee you one day they're going to say, hey, time for you to move to the big guy, and we're going to put you in the right seat of a 7-3 or whatever, you know. So I highly recommend that. You guys have been great with all of the insight and advice. Your associations are great. I could have had 3 times as many people on the show because there's like General Aviation Manufacturer Association, et cetera. There's all these as we love to call, as we affectionately call them, alphabet groups out there that are we're all doing the same thing. Everybody's trying to keep everybody informed, provide information and services, and at the same time encourage and bring people into the industry, which is probably our biggest calling. And as it was mentioned earlier a couple of times, this too shall pass. I love that phrase because it really will. For those of us who've been in the aviation industry a long time, it does have a little bit of a cyclical thing to it, but it will come back. And as we were talking about before, I think, I don't know if we, can't remember if we mentioned it on the show, but the industry was at a point just before the pandemic in bad need of, a great need, I should say, of pilots, you know, pilot shortage, mechanic shortage, except pretty much a shortage in a lot of the main areas. That is still true. Yes, it slowed down for a minute. Yes, everybody put things on pause, but that's gonna roar back pretty heavily in all aspects of the industry, and it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. So we hope that the conversations today with everybody were encouraging, and that there's some valuable input, and that if any of you have any further questions, you're welcome to contact the associations directly, or you can contact me, and I'd be happy to steer you to the right person and that type of thing. I want to thank everybody for watching All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Sierra Grimes with NBAA, Rucsandra, Mihai with Women in Corporate Aviation, Stacy Shearer, the chair of board of directors for the Helicopter Association International, HAI, Cassandra Bosco with the Women in Aviation, and Stephanie Hartsfield with OBAP, or better known as the Organization for Black Aerospace Professionals. Thank you all for being on the show. Everybody take care, and I will see you guys next week.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Everybody stay safe.